conceptual design, you can actually use Revit flows, simple flows, just to communicate the conceptual design of a pedestrian bridge. You don't have to go into too much depth when it comes to the workflow, like using Civil 3D to InfraWorks and then to Inventor and then back to InfraWorks and then to Revit. You can just keep it as simple as you can and then use ramps, flows in order for you to communicate your own um, perception and your own ideas. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the VDC space. Today we're going to be doing a conceptual design or model for a pedestrian bridge. We're going to keep it as simple as you can. We're going to use floors, uh, ramps, railings, and also girders, and then simple parapets in order for us to model our pedestrian bridge. Before I get started, I would like to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you already subscribed, hit that notification button as I upload the BIM modeling tutorials and Revit tutorials 3 times every week. I cover different topics from wastewater to structural architecture, roads and earthworks and bridges, and so on. Now, without further ado, let's jump into Revit. So I'm just going to use the construction template. You guys can open up the construction template on Revit 24, and then I'm just going to uncheck these. So uh, the level of detail is going to be from 300 to 350. And then we're going to generate specific parapets and also bridge girders. Those are the two elements whereby they're going to have much higher level of detail. Otherwise, everything else is going to be as basic. We're going to keep it as basic as we can. So the views, I'm just going to extend the views because it's going to be a much larger structure. So I'm going to offset it by 100,000. The east and the west, I'm going to offset them by 100,000. And then the north and the south, I'm going to offset them by 50,000 millimeters. Then the south is also going to be 50,000 millimeters. And then I'm just going to increase the scale and make it 1 is to, actually I'm going to make it 1 is to 500. And then just select your views and then extend the view range so that you can see your levels for the annotations of the levels from each side. And also you can see the entire bridge structure when you open up the elevations. So after that, I'm going to go to the south elevation, and then I'm just going to extend these levels, and then I'm just going to change these levels. So I'm going to rename this one 00 dash and say, name it base, say yes. And then the second one is going to be 01 dash, and then I'm going to name it walkway. Press enter and say yes, and then I'm going to change the offset and make it 6,000 millimeters. And then from there, I don't want to use the floor plans, so I'm going to go to view, and then under view I'm going to go to plan views, structural plan, and then I'm going to select these two, make sure this box is checked, do not duplicate the existing views, and say okay. And now I'm going to use the structural plan, so I'm going to go to base, close up these floor plans, and then I'm going to change the scale to 1 is to 500, and then the level of detail to fine. So this is what we have. The next thing is I'm going to go to architecture and set up my grids. So I'm going to set up my first grid. So this first grid is where our apartment is going to be based. So from there, I'm going to select my grids again and say pick lines, and then I'm going to offset the first one by 13,500 millimeters. And then I'm going to change it to 13,000 this time. And then I'm going to apply 7 more. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. So let me just change the scale to 1 is to 200. I think that's fine. And then from there, I'm going to go to grids again, and then pick lines, and then I'm going to offset it by 1525 millimeters from there, and then I'm going to change the offset to 30,050 millimeters, 30,050 1,550 millimeters, and then another 1,525 millimeters, and then I'm going to offset it from there, and then another 13,000 millimeters, and then the final 13,000 millimeters. So this portion is where our roads or our rail tracks are going to be passing. So the main structure is going to be based here, sort of like the walkway, the where the roads are going to be passing and all that. So I'm going to go to grid again and then place a horizontal grid like this and then change it to grid A. I'm going to rename it grid A. And then from this point, we're going to start our modeling. And now for our modeling, we're going to start with our bases. So for the abutments or our landings, the base we're going to use, we're going to go to insert, load family, metric library, UK contents, and say structural foundation, footing rectangular, and say open. Go to structure, under structure, uh, go to structure, under foundation, you're going to go to isolated, and then place your foundation there, select it, go to edit type, duplicate, and then you're going to change this to 6,000 by 6,000 by 1,000 millimeter, and then the length is going to be 6,000, the width is going to be 6,000, and then the thickness is going to be 1,000 millimeters, and say okay, perfect. And now you're going to select it, copy it to the other grid, copy it, not move it. So you're going to copy it to the other grid, and then you select it, edit type, duplicate, and now these ones are going to be for the piers. So for the piers, it's going to be a much smaller base. So we're going to set it to, let's set it to 2,000 millimeters by 2,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters. So the length is going to be 2,000. The width is going to be 2,000, and then the thickness is going to be 2,000. Perfect. And now, while it's still selected, I'm going to copy it to the other grids. Perfect. And then we're gonna stop there. These ones we're not gonna use it. It's gonna be a much different scenario when our ramps and our landings are reaching this portion of the bridge. So we'll get there. And now, considering we've generated our bases, the next thing is we're gonna place our columns. So for our columns, you're gonna go to insert, load family again, metric library, and say structural columns, concrete, and then concrete the round and say open. And now you're gonna go to structure. Under structure, you're gonna go to column. Make sure your constraints are set to height, and then your top level is set to walkway, and then everything is gonna be adjusted after everything is assembled. So we're gonna change our columns. We're gonna say duplicate, edit type, and then duplicate. So our columns, we're gonna change them to, we're gonna make them 1,000 millimeter in diameter. So it's gonna be 1,000 millimeter diameter. We can name it pier. Say okay, and then we're gonna change B to 1,000 millimeter and say okay. Then we're gonna place them like this. So if I open up the 3D view, I like to use the floor plan, the south elevation, and the 3D view. So I'm going to select my levels and say maximize 3D extend, and then do the same thing for this one, maximize 3D extend. Go to the 3D view, and this is what we have so far. And while we're at it, so we're going to go to, we're gonna actually start with this side of the bridge also, and then so we're gonna open up the walkway structural plan, and then we're gonna start modeling our landings and also our ramps. So for our landings and ramps, we're gonna use floors and say edit type and say duplicate, and then we're gonna change this to 400 millimeter thick slab and say okay, and then we're gonna remove these layers. So we're going to be left with one layer. I think it's fine with precast. So the thickness, we're going to change it to 400 and say okay, and say okay. And now from this point, we're going to place a rectangle like this. So it's going to be 4,000 millimeter in width. So it's going to be 2,000 each side. And then every landing is going to be 3,000 millimeter in length. So I'm going to select it, and then this is where your construction joint is gonna happen. So we're gonna offset this by 25 millimeter from this grid. So it's gonna be 25 millimeter, and then this side also, our girders and our walkways are gonna be offset by 25 millimeter to allow for that construction joint. So from this moment, this is what we have, and then we're gonna say okay. And then I'll open up the 3D view, and this is what we have. So if I open up the south elevation, and this is what we have. So from this point, we're gonna model our ramps, and then as we model our ramps, we're gonna adjust the length, the heights of our piers, and also the position of our bases in terms of uh, yes, also the position of our bases in terms of the heights. So this is conceptual. We're gonna adjust as we model along, and then we're gonna go to floor again, still on 400 millimeter thick slab, and then we're gonna model our floor. So each ramp is gonna be 10,000 millimeter in length, and then it's gonna have the same width of 4,000 millimeter. So from there, we're going to apply the slope. So the slope arrows are going to be facing that way, and then set the height offset to 0. And then our constraints are going to be set to slope. So to accommodate the people with disabilities who are using uh, uh, wheelchairs, and also pedestrians who are using bicycles, you can apply two slopes, which are 1:12 ratio of 1:12, and also 1:20. But in this instance, I prefer 1:12, which is 4.764 degrees. So I'm going to change the slope to 4.764 degrees, and say finish edit mode, open up the 3D view. As you can see, it's facing the other way. So I'm just going to change this to minus, and then it's going to be adjusted like this. Perfect. And now if I open up the south elevation, just to make things much more faster, I'm going to select these two and say copy. And then from this insertion point, I'm going to copy it to this point. So it's going to be based like this. Do the same thing, this side, also this side, this side, this side, this side, and also this side. Perfect. And now from there, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna select this base for our apartment, which we are going to use as our reference. So I'm gonna say move, select this, and then I'm gonna place it like this. So for our abutment or our landing, it's gonna be 1,000 millimeter in thickness. So I'm gonna go back to base, and then under base, as you can see, we cannot see our foundations for our abutments. So I'm gonna press VR for view range, set the view depth to minus 5,000 millimeters, and then the bottom to minus 5,000 millimeters. Set the top to 5,000 millimeters and the cut plane to 5,000 millimeters, and say apply, and then OK. From this moment, I'm going to use floors, structural floors, and then I'm going to change this to 1000. So I'm going to go to edit type, duplicate, and then change this to 1000 millimeter thick uh, landing, and say okay. And then I'm going to change the thickness to 1000 millimeters and say okay. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle from this insertion point. So it's going to be 4000 millimeter in width and also in length. So from this point, I'm going to make it 4000 millimeters. So this is what we have, and say finish edit mode. If I go to the south elevation, I'm going to move it from this insertion point and then place it like this, and then attach the base towards the bottom of this landing like this. So this is our reference. From there, I'm gonna say reference plane and then place my reference plane on top of these, on top of this base, and then drag it across like this. And then I'm gonna press my I'm gonna select one of my columns, right click and say select all instances visible in view, and say under modify column, I'm gonna say attach top or base, and then set my constraint to base, and then select this reference plane, and then they're gonna be adjusted like this. And then so I'm gonna adjust the top levels of these columns again. So I'm gonna do it one by one this time. So let me just drag these grids upwards like this. So for the first one, I'm going to select it and say attach top or base. And then this time I'm going to set the constraints to attach column top and then select this landing. So it's going to be adjusted like this. And then I'm going to apply the same logic for the other columns along with their landings. So everything is adjusted. If I open up the 3D view, this is what we have so far. So the next thing is I'm going to select this ramp, go to the south elevation, and then I'm going to say copy, and then from there I'm going to place it like this, and then this is our approach ramp. I'm going to select it, go back to base, and say copy, and then from the middle I'm gonna select from this insertion point, I'm gonna copy it and place it like this. And as you can see, it is clashing, and then while it's still selected, I'm gonna go to rotate, center of rotation place, and then I'm gonna place my insertion point there, and then I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees to the right like this. And now this is what we have. So we have two approach ramps like this, and then the abutment or landing, and then we have our ramps and then our landings along our bridge. So if I go to the south elevation, and this is what we have so far. So the next thing is I'm going to select this, landing and then this ramp, and then I'm gonna say draw mirror draw axis, and then I'm just gonna uh, draw it manually like this. And obviously we have to have that 50 millimeter offset from there for the construction joint. So I'm going to select my landing and then set it to 25 millimeters like this, and then I'm going to adjust this ramp and attach it to this landing like this. Perfect. And now while you're at it, I'm going to select my other landing and then copy it from this insertion point to this insertion point, and then I'm gonna do the same thing again. So we're gonna have um, two ramps and two landings like this before we take our bridge, before we apply the spiral of this side on the right hand side. So if I go back to the base structural plan, and we're gonna have a spiral like this which runs like this and under the bridge like this. So what we need to do is I'm gonna extend this A grid, and then from there I'm gonna go to the walkway floor plan, and on the walkway, as we can see everything. So I'm gonna set the view range to minus 6,000 millimeters, minus 6,000 millimeters, apply, and then set the top to 1,500, set the cut plane to 1,500, apply, and then OK. And then from there, I'm gonna select I'm gonna type in DL for detail line, and then from there I'm gonna select my start and rug areas, and then I'm gonna draw my references for the spiral. So I'm gonna start from this insertion point, take it upwards by 15,000 millimeters, and then I'm gonna place it like this. And then I'm gonna select my straight line and then apply a line of 3,000 millimeter length, and then select my start and radius again and then mirror it to the other side. But then I'm gonna select my detail line and then adjust it like this. And then so it's gonna be 3000. We have to make sure it doesn't clash. So actually, let me just remove this. So I'm gonna type in DL for detail line, and then from this insertion point, I'm gonna take it upwards by, let's make it, let's see, with 20,000 millimeters. Then from there, it's gonna be 3000. Then I'm gonna select this and then mirror it to the other side. And then I'm gonna adjust it like this. So it's still so I'm gonna have to change it to 25,000. I don't want it to be close to the pier that's gonna be based here or to clash with it. So I'm gonna remove this detail line, DL again, start and radius from this insertion point, take it upwards by 25,000, and then place it like this, straight line, 3000 millimeters, select the start and radius, and mirror it to the other side like this, select it and then adjust it like this. Yes, and then detail line again. For the straight line, you're gonna place it like this, and then you can just make this so you can change this to 20,000 millimeters. Perfect. And now you can press DL again and then go to pick lines and then set the offset to 4,000 millimeters. So it's going to be 4,000 millimeters. And then you can say DL again, detail line, and then you can close it like this. So this is how our bridge is going to look on the spiral. So the next thing is I'm going to press DL again for reference. So I'm going to choose this middle midpoint and then place a line like this, and then this side also. And also this side is there's gonna be a landing. Let me see, I don't know about this side. Yeah, there's gonna be also a landing this side. And then if I press tab while I'm on this curve, I don't know if I'll ever snap to the midpoint. So I'm gonna select this line and say mirror pick axis, and then it's gonna be copied. And then I'm gonna do the same thing this side. I don't know if I snap. So if I drag this line like this, it's not gonna work. So I'm gonna say DL. So I'm just gonna pick a point from there, and then I'm gonna place my line like this. So we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 landings. In order for me, I just want to reduce the length of of our our ramps. That's why I placed so much landings on our spiral. So from there, uh, if I go to the 3D view, so we're gonna place our spiral. Just go to the walkway. So you're gonna, under structure, you're gonna go to floor, and then we're gonna use the 400 millimeter thick slab. So you're gonna pick lines from there, and then from this point you're gonna offset it by 3000 millimeters. Then you're gonna say trim and extend. And then you're gonna say finish edit mode, go to the 3D view, and then you're gonna adjust this. So you're gonna attach it to this ramp. So just to make things easier, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place my landings. So if I go to flow again and then say pick lines, and then I'm gonna set my landings to 1500, and then I'm gonna use these detail lines as my reference. And then I'm just gonna pick lines using those detail lines. Everything becomes much easier. So finish, and then the next landing, I'm gonna say pick lines, set the offset to 1005, and then trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, and then trim and extend, and say finish edit mode. The next landing, I'm gonna say floor, pick lines, and then set the offset to 1.5, then say trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, and say finish edit mode. Go to flow again, pick lines, set the offset to 1.5. Then I think this is fine, so I'm gonna say finish edit mode. And what we can do is, okay, I'm just gonna go to flow again, pick lines, set the offset to 1.5, then pick this detail line, offset it, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend. Finish edit mode, flow, pick lines, set the offset to 1.5, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, and say finish it and hold. Perfect. And now we have our landings, but obviously we have to set up our ramps. So this is going to be the part where you guys have to concentrate a lot. So from the south elevation, I'm just going to go to walkway, go to flow again and say pick lines. And then for our ramps, I'm going to say pick lines and say trim and extend again, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend. Then I'm gonna select my slope error and set it from this midpoint to this midpoint. But obviously it's skewed. The easier way is you can actually model a single floor like this as a spiral and then use the modify tool if you guys know it, and then you can adjust it manually. But we can do that. That's the other way you can do it. But I just want to separate the elements as much as I can along with the landings. I know you can use the split lines and all those things on the modify tool option. That's the another way of doing things. But yeah, so I'm just gonna select this arrow, set the height offset to 0, specify it by slope, and then I'm gonna set the slope to 4.764 and say finish edit mode. Go to the 3D view, so it's facing the other way, so I'm gonna change it from a positive to a negative. Perfect. If I go to the south elevation, I'm gonna select my slope, and then from its highest point I'm going to place it right there. And then as you can see, this side the highest point is on the left hand side, and then from the left hand side on the other side I'm going to place my reference plane like this horizontally while I'm on the south elevation. And then I'm going to select my landing, go back to the south elevation, and then place my landing where this reference plane is it's placed. So if I go to the 3D view, I have my references, my landings I'm going to use as my references. I'm going to select my floor, go to edit boundary, remove my slope, and say finish edit mode, and say modify sub elements. And now I'm going to select this point, drag it towards the top, and then adjust it like this. Do the same thing this side, and then I'm going to select this line and then place it like this. Perfect. Now this is what we have. Now we're going to apply the same logic when it comes to the others. So let's go. Go back to the walkway, and then you can go to floor, pick lines, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend. Slope arrow from this point, you can place it like this. Set this to 0, set this to slope, minus 4.764. Finish edit mode, go to 3D view, go to the south elevation, select the highest point. So this is the highest point. Place it like this. Reference plane, pick this side, place it like this. Go to 3D view, select your landings, go back to the south elevation, and then move it towards that reference plane. And then go to the 3D view. You have your reference planes as your landings as your reference. Now you can select your ramp, remove the slope arrow, say finish edit mode, modify sub elements, and then adjust it manually like this. Perfect. And now we're gonna do the same thing, go to walkway, and then this side, you're gonna select your floor again, pick lines, then trim and extend, trim and extend. Apply the slope, say finish edit mode. This time we can go to the east elevation, and then as you can see it's facing the other way, so you can change this to minus. On the east elevation you can select the highest point of the floor and then drag it towards this point. And then while you're at it, go to reference plane, select this point, place your reference plane like this. 3D view, select your landing, go to the east elevation, and then move it downwards like this to this reference plane. Open up the 3D view. Now you can use those landings as a reference. Select your ramp, remove the slope, finish edit mode, modify sub elements, select this point, drag it towards the top. Select this point, drag it towards there. Select this line and then drag it towards this landing. Perfect. And now the next thing is you can apply the same logic this side. So you can select the this can go to flow again actually. Pick lines again, trim and extend, trim and extend. Slope arrow from this point to this point. Change this to 0, change this to slope, and then your slope change it to 4.764. Say finish edit mode, go to your 3D view, and then you're gonna change it to minus. Change this to east. From its highest point, you're gonna drag it from there to there. While you're at it, you're gonna go to reference plane, and then from this point, you're gonna place it your reference point like this. Go to 3D view, select your landing, go to the east elevation again, and then drag your landing towards this reference plane. Go back to the 3D view, select your ramp, go to edit boundary, select your arrow, remove it, and say finish edit mode, modify sub element, select your point, drag it towards the top, do the same thing this side. And then you're gonna select your line like this and then drag it downwards like this. Perfect. Now go back to the walkway again. And now you can actually select this floor and say mirror pick axis. And let's see. So obviously it's facing the other way. So go back to the walkway and then mirror it like you're gonna mirror it from this side. Let's see how it looks this side. And then you can mirror it again like this. And then mirror it like this. Okay, so if I select this one and then rotate it like okay, so we're not gonna complicate things, just remove it like this. Go back to your walkway, floor, pick lines, pick lines, pick lines, pick lines, trim and extend, trim and extend. Apply your arrow from there to there. Set this to 0, set this to slope, 4.76 4.764, say okay. Open up the north elevation, go to the 3D view, select your ramp, set your slope to minus instead, go to the north elevation. From its highest point, you're going to drag it towards this uh, landing, and then you're going to select your reference plane, and then from this point you're going to draw your reference plane, and then you're going to select your landing, your other landing, and then drag it towards this reference plane. Go to the 3D view, select your ramp, edit boundary, remove the slope arrow, say finish edit mode, go to modify sub elements, and then drag your points towards this landing. Then select your line this side and then drag it towards this landing. Perfect. Walkway again, go to floor, pick lines, pick lines, pick lines, pick lines, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend. Slope arrow. Then from this point to this point, you're gonna set this to 0, specify it to slope, set the slope to 4.764, and say finish edit mode. Go to your 3D view, set your slope to minus instead, to negative. And now on the north elevation, grab the highest point of your ramp and then drag it towards this point. And then while you're at it, go to reference plane, and then from this point, draw your reference plane, select your landing, and then move it towards that reference plane. Go to the 3D view, select your ramp, edit the boundary, remove your arrows, finish edit mode, modify sub elements, select your 2 points, and then drag it upwards like this, and then select your line and then drag it towards this landing like that. And now we are almost there. This is the simple part. So you're gonna go to floor again, select a rectangle this time, and then you're gonna draw your slab, your ramp like this, and then you're gonna select your slope arrow from the middle, place it like this, set the height offset to 0, set it this to slope 4.764, and say finish edit mode. Go to the 3D view, set it to negative instead, and then you're gonna say align to this landing, so it's gonna be placed like this. Perfect. So if I go to the south elevation, and this is what we have. So uh, based on our ramp, we're gonna use that as our reference in order for us to offset our bases this side also, but we'll get there. So if I open up the 3D view, and this is what we have. So from this point, I'm gonna go to base again, and then select my apartment or my landing and also its base, and then copy it from this point to this point, and then I'm just gonna move it, adjust it like this until it's placed like that, and then I'm just so from that point, so I'm just gonna move it like this. So if I go to the walkway, so I'm just gonna adjust the levels, and let me just go to base and just randomly move it like this. So obviously, I'm gonna select my abutment and then move it like that, and then it's clashing with my base. So I'm gonna set this to wireframe instead and say aligned. So I'm gonna align my landing towards the bottom of this ramp like this, and then I touch the top of my base for my apartment on the bottom of my landing or my apartment like that. Set this back to shaded, and then this is how it looks. So if I go to the south elevation, we're gonna say architecture and say reference plane, and then we're gonna apply our reference plane down there, and then this is what we are going to use as our reference in terms of our the placement of our bases for our piers and our apartments. So from there, I'm gonna go to the 3D view. I'm gonna go to a base instead and say structure and then floor, and then we're gonna model our approach ramp. So I'm just gonna make it 17,000 millimeters, and then it's gonna be 4,000 millimeters in width. So I'm gonna place it like this and say finish edit mode. Actually, I'm going to select it, reset shape. I'm going to select it and then apply the slope arrow on the middle because it's going to be approach ramp. Set this to 0, set this to slope, and then set this to 4.764 and say finish edit mode. Then actually, I'm just going to change it minus, and this is how it looks. So I'm going to align it towards this apartment like this. Perfect. If I go to the south elevation, and this is what we have. So the next thing is I'm gonna go to base, and then I'm gonna place my I'm gonna actually place my piers. So I'm gonna press view range because I want to see everything, and then set this to 7,000, 7,000, apply, and then okay, perfect. So I'm gonna go to under structure, I'm gonna go to column, select my column, then place it like this. So on our landings that is based on our spiral, actually we cannot see everything. So I'm gonna press DL for detail line, and then I'm gonna place detail lines just to use as my reference on where I can place my piers. So make sure your detail lines are snapping towards the midpoints of your uh, of your shapes. If it doesn't, constantly press tab on your keyboard until you see those triangular red markings, which indicates that you are snapping towards the midpoint. So go to column again, and now you can place it much more easier. If I go to the 3D view, and if I go to the 3D view, and this is what we have. So I'm just going to select my columns, go to attach top or base under modify column, set my constraints to attach column top, and press my landings. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other ones. Now, before I continue, obviously I have to set the bottom of our piers. And how I can set that, I'm going to go to the south elevation and press one of my columns, right click and say select all instances visible in view, attach top or base, set my constraint to base, and then select this bottom reference plane. So it's going to be adjusted like this. Go to the 3D view. Now everything visually makes more sense now. So I'm going to go to attach top base again under modify column, set this to top instead, and then select my landings again. Perfect. So now this is how it looks. Now, obviously, we're going to have to place our bases. I'm going to go to base. The thing I like about the foundations in Revit is even though when you place it on a different level, it's going to detect the columns, and then it's going to be automatically placed on the bottom of your columns. So I'm going to go to isolated foundations, and then for this one, we're going to use 2000 by 2000 by 1000, and then I'm going to place it like this. And then to change its orientation, you're going to have to press tab on your keyboard until it changes its orientation. So I'm going to place it like that and go to the 3D view. This is what we have. Now, the next thing is also I'm going to have to select this and say, so I'm going to have to align this like that. Okay, perfect. Now The main part of our pedestrian bridge obviously is going to be based here, and the cars or the train is going to be running underneath. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to have to, let me just place the bases first. Actually, let me just construct the columns. So I'm going to go to the base structural plan, set, make sure it's set to wireframe. So actually, let me start with the bridge girders. So I'm going to go to file, and then we're going to go to new and say family. And then I'm going to say metric structural framing. Actually, I'm not going to use beams just to make things less complicated. I'm going to use generic models and say open. And now while I'm on the reference level or the floor plan, I'm going to select the reference planes, and then I'm going to place each on two on each side. And then from this part, I'm going to say equals to 3,333 divided by 2 and press enter. And then this side also is going to be 1,666.5, press enter. And then I'm going to select my dimensions and then place my dimensions using those reference plane, and then select my dimensions, go to create parameter, and then I'm going to name this length. And then in order for me to create drag points on my bridge girder, I'm going to make this an instance parameter and say OK. And then I'm going to go to the left elevation, go to create, select my reference plane, and then I'm going to offset it by 1,800 millimeters from this reference plane, and then just drag this one down like this. And then I'm going to generate my geometry. So I'm going to use extrusion from this insertion point. I'm going to offset it by 600, and then I'm going to go down by 300 diagonally by 45 degrees, and then 300, then go down by 500, and then I'm gonna go diagonally by 400, and then 135 degrees, and then go down by 400, and then a chamfer of 148.5 millimeters at 45 degrees, and then I'm gonna take it to the right like this. So I'm gonna hover over one line, press tab on my keyboard, everything is selected, go to mirror pick axis, and then pick this middle reference plane, and then I'm just gonna remove these lines and then just join this and make these single lines. I'm gonna apply the material to this, so I'm gonna make it concrete. So I'm gonna change this to precast concrete, load it in, apply OK, and save. Finish edit mode, go to the reference level, drag it to this reference plane, lock it in order for me to control its length, and then drag it to this reference plane and then lock it. So I'm gonna open up the 3D view. This is how it looks. So I'm gonna load it into our project. I'm not gonna save this, I already did. And then go to the walkway, and then I'm just gonna randomly place it like this. And then as you can see, we have our drag points. So I'm gonna drag it towards this side until this grid. So we have, remember, we still have that 50. So this is 25. So I'm gonna have to drag it like this and apply dimensions from this grid until this uh, bridge girder. So I'm going to select it and then set my offset to 25 millimeters so that we can have that 50 millimeter spacing for our construction joint. So let me just remove this dimension, and then I'm going to drag it this side also, and then press my dimensions, apply my dimensions. It's 45, select it, and then set this to 25, and then remove it. Now we have that 50 millimeter spacing for our joint. Go to the 3D view, and this is how it looks like. And obviously we're gonna have to offset this. So I'm gonna select my family, and then I'm gonna offset it by minus 150 millimeters, because we're gonna place a 150 millimeter slab on top of our girders. So I'm gonna select this girder, go to my walkway, and then I'm gonna press copy, and then from this from the middle, from this insertion point, I'm going to copy to the left by, so I'm going to make it 1200. So it is actually clashing, so I'm going to select it again, then copy to the right by 1.5. I think 1.5 works. Let's see how much is the offset. So it's 159, so I'm going to select it and then make it 75, and then select it and say mirror pickaxes, pick this grid, and then it's copied to the other side. So this is how it looks. And now on the walkway, I'm gonna place my slab. So I'm gonna go to floor, edit type, duplicate, change this to 115 millimeter thick slab. Say OK, change and go to edit, and then change the thickness to 150 and say OK. Place my rectangle like this. So I'm gonna use those landings as my reference, but obviously I'm gonna have to drag it to this side so that we can accommodate that 50 millimeter for our construction joint. And say finish edit mode, go to the 3D view, and this is what we have now. And now obviously something has to balance our landings for this one. It doesn't have a pier, so we're gonna have to place a downstand beam for that. So if I go to the south elevation and then measure it from there to there, our downstand is going to be 1,550 millimeter in height, and then our width is going to be 800. So I'm going to go to the walkway again, and then just going to set this to fine, this to wireframe, and then I'm going to go to insert, load family, metric library, UK contents, and then go to structural framing, concrete, and say concrete rectangular, and say open. Go to structure, beam, and then go to edit type. I'm gonna change this to 800 by 1550 millimeter, and say OK. 1550 millimeters, and then set this to 800 and say OK. And then I'm going to set my reference to walkway, and then my Y justification, I'm going to change it from origin to right, so that if I use this as my reference, as my insertion point, it's going to be placed on the right hand side of this line. So I'm going to select this and then drag it until this point, so it's going to be placed like this. Go to the 3D view. I'm going to select my beam. Obviously something is wrong. Sorry about that, guys. It seems like my Revit crashed while I was in the middle of doing that downstand beam. But yeah, we can continue. So I'm using a network license, so I've lost network and everything just crashed. But yeah, so this is the model I actually saved before I did the demonstration. So I will just use this one that I have saved. I did this one much earlier. It differs a little bit from the one I was currently doing, but just follow the logic and you guys can apply what I demonstrate here on the current one you are working on. So yeah, we were on the downstand beam. So you're gonna go to uh, the 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 walkway structural plan, go to structure, go to beam, and then you're gonna obviously let me just rename this, so it's 800 by 1550. Say okay, and then okay. So you're gonna set the justification to right. So this is gonna be your insertion point, and then you're gonna place it like this. Open up the 3D view. As you can see, it clashes. So I'm gonna set this to minus 1800, and then also this to minus 1800, just to manually adjust it. And then press AL for align, and then I'm gonna align it on the bottom of this landing. So it's gonna be placed like that. So this is our downstand beam that's balancing this landing because it doesn't have a pier under it. So I'm going to select this downstand beam, go to walkway, and then I'm going to say mirror, and then I'm going to choose the middle of my span, and then it's going to be copied to the other side. So let me just remove these reference planes and also these sections, and let me just open up the 3D view. So this is how it looks. Okay, now the next thing is we're gonna have to generate our piers that's gonna be balancing these downstand beams and also these girders. So for that, we can go to open up the base. So I'm just gonna remove these detail lines. So on the base floor plan, I'm gonna go to File and say New and say Family, and then I'm gonna go to Metric Structural Column and say Open, and then I'm gonna set my width to 2000 millimeters, and then set my depth to I'm gonna set my depth to, let's set it to 3000, I think. Actually, we're gonna set it to 1500 instead. And then I'm just gonna drag these annotations and then go to the front elevation. And on the front elevation, I think the level it's fine as it is. So we're gonna go to create and say extrusion. And then from this point, we're gonna draw our geometry. So from this insertion point, you're gonna take it to the right by 1000, and then actually go to create, go to reference plane, and then place 2 reference planes on each side like this. And then from the middle reference plane, you're gonna offset it by 2000. So it's gonna be 2000 this side and also 2000 this side. And then from this point, you're gonna draw a line from this insertion point to the left by, and then you're gonna make it 600. I think it's fine at 600. And then you're gonna draw your pier like this, and then 600 also this side, and then it's gonna be based like this. So in total, it's gonna be 1200, and then this side is gonna be 4000. So you're gonna apply material to this and make it concrete. And then when you go down, you're gonna say you can just make it the precast and say okay, and then say finish edit mode, go to lower reference level, and then drag it to this side, then log it, and then also drag it to this side and also log it. Go to the front elevation, press AL for alignment, and then align the top and also align the bottom against these reference planes so that you may control the depth or the height of your column. So you're gonna load your column in and say no, and then go to the base, set your placement to vertical column, set your constraints to height, and then set your top level to walkway, and then you're gonna place it like just randomly place it there, and then from this point you can select the reference plane and then set your offset to 25 millimeters, and then draw a line like this, and then this point you're gonna use it as your reference point. Select your column and then find the middle, the midpoint, and then you're gonna move it towards this point right there. If you open up the 3D view, this is how it looks. So when you go to the south elevation, you're gonna select your column, attach to base, and then set your constraint to base, and then select this reference plane, and then you can measure from this level to this point, and it's gonna be 2454. So you're gonna select your column, and then your top level offset you're gonna say minus 2454, and then it's gonna be adjusted like this. But obviously, if you open up the 3D view, This is no way. This is not where it ends. We're gonna have to apply bearings on top of our columns. So our bearings in total, it's gonna be 1,250 in height. So you're gonna select your column and then add equal sign on the top level offset, and then you're gonna subtract this value by 1,250 and say unjoin element. So it's gonna be adjusted like this. Actually, that doesn't work. Let me just say undo and then go to the south elevation. And if I go to the south elevation, okay, let me just say undo again. So this is 2454. So it's going to be minus 2454 minus 1250 and join elements. So it's going to be placed like this. So it's going to be 1, 2, yeah, I think it's fine. So if I open up the 3D view, and this is what we have, but this sort of doesn't look right. So if I open up the south elevation, and then let me just select my column, so I can set this to minus 25 or minus 28, and let me check the offset. So it's 346. Let me select my column again and then set it to 3000. So it's 546. Set it to minus 350. So it's 1046. So if it's gonna be 1046, we can make our concrete epoxy. We're gonna make it 800. We're gonna make it 800, and our elastomer or our rubber, we're gonna make it 246. 246. So it's fine. So I'm gonna go to walkway, and then let me just go to the south elevation, select my column, and then mirror it to the other side, and then go to my base again. For my base, I'm gonna go to isolated. So the base for our columns, so I'm just gonna place it like this. Go to the 3D view. The base for our columns, the dimensions are gonna be 4,000 in length, 1,800 in width, 1,000 millimeters in thickness. So okay, so I'm gonna select it and then go to the south elevation, and then I'm gonna mirror it to the other side also. Now go back to the walkway, go to file, new, and then family, and then go to metric generic model, open. We're gonna draw our bearings. So you're gonna go to the front elevation, select the swept blend, which consists of two profiles. Go to sketch path. From this insertion point, you're gonna take it upwards by 800 and say finish. Select profile one, edit profile, and say open up the floor plan, open up view, and then you're gonna draw your rectangle. And now if I go back to my project, specifically the walkway structural plan, as you can see, this is my downstand beam, and this is my girders. So if I extend this line in the middle, I'm gonna have to place my bearings. I'm gonna have to place two rubbers for my bearings, two elastomers specifically. So It's gonna consist of a single concrete epoxy, so, and then two rubbers, which one is gonna be supporting the downstand beam, and the other one is gonna be supporting the concrete girders. So I'm gonna press DL for detail line, and then temporarily place a rectangle using my detail line, so just to check how it will fit under our girders and also under our downstand beam. So I'm gonna offset it from this reference plane by 600. Then this side it's gonna be, so it's gonna be 1200. And then from the middle I'm gonna offset it by another 600, I think. And then the total I can make it 1200. So yeah, I think that works. And another detail line, so I'm gonna offset it by 100 and then draw a rectangle right inside. So it's gonna, so our epoxies, if I press DL again and then put two circles, so our elastomers are going to be placed like this, basically. So this one is going to be supporting the downstand, this one the concrete girders. So yeah, everything is perfect. So I'm just going to remove these detail lines. So our concrete epoxy is going to be 1.2 by 1.2. Let me just write it down and then offset it by 100. Okay, let's go back to our generic model. So from this point, it's going to be 600, then 1200, 600, 1200. Say finish, select profile 2, edit profile. And then as you can see, I cannot snap on towards the first profile. I cannot snap. So I'm just going to randomly place a rectangle like this. And then I'm going to apply the same dimensions as the first profile. And then we're going to adjust it afterwards. So now I'm going to select my second rectangle and say offset it to 100. Select this and then offset it right on the inside. And then I'm going to remove this one. And then I'm going to say finish edit mode, open up the 3D view, and then select my epoxy and then set it to concrete. So I'm just going to make this concrete cast in place gray and say okay. And then I'm gonna say load into project. Actually, the next thing is I'm gonna go to the front elevation and then go to the reference level, create and then extrusion again. Select your circle. And then from this, from the middle, you can draw your circle. You can make it 180, so it's going to be 360 in diameter. So, and then you're going to move it this side, offset it by 250, enter, and then you're going to mirror it and copy it to the other side. Finish edit mode, and then you're going to change these ones to rubber, so you can just type in rubber and say load in rubber black and say okay. Go to the front elevation, and then you're going to move it, you're going to drag it towards this point, and then the top level you're going to set it to so you're going to set it to 246. Press enter. Perfect. And now if you open up the 3D view, this is how it looks. So you're going to say load into project and say no, and then go to the walkway plan, and then you're going to place it like this. Open up the 3D view of your project, and then you're gonna align it towards the top of your column, so it's gonna be placed like this. Visually, the offset seems doesn't look really right, but just for the purpose of this tutorial, I think it's right for the demonstration. So I can just select my bearings and then go to the walkway plan and then copy it from this point. I'm going to use my girders as my reference and then copy towards these. Select my control, select all my bearings, use mirror draw axis and then copy it to the other side, open up the 3D view, and this is how it looks. Now the next thing is obviously we're gonna have to generate parapets when it comes to the span, the metal span. So we can also use just go to the walkway floor plan and then set this to hidden lines. And as you can see, I offset this from, remember we offset the 150 millimeter slab. We offset it by a certain number. So for this one, I offset it from the exterior of the girders by 2 to 6. So you guys can measure from your side and then you can apply the same logic I apply when I generate the parapets. So I'm gonna go to File, New, and say Family. And then I'm gonna go to Metric Generic Model and say Open. And then I'm gonna place 2 reference planes on each side. And then I'm gonna say equals to 333 divided by 2. So it's 1666.5. So this side is going to be 1666.5 and press enter. Go to, actually, I want us to have drag points when it comes to our parapet. So I'm going to apply the dimension and press my dimensions, create parameters, and then I'm going to name this one length. And then I'm going to make this an instance parameter in order for us to create drag points. And then I'm going to go to the left elevation. So I'm going to say extrusion. And then from this insertion point, I'm going to make this 226. And then I'm going to take it upwards by 150. And then I'm going to take it to the right by 226 again. And then I'm going to take it upwards by 1200. And then I'm gonna select this line and then offset it by copy it to the right by 300. And then I'm gonna create a chamfer, so it's gonna be a diagonal line at 60 degrees with a length of 300, and then take it to the right by 150, and then I'm gonna attach it this side. And I'm gonna take it downwards by 2.4. Then from this point, I'm going to take it downwards also. And then I'm going to join them at the bottom like this. So I'm going to create chamfers of 100 millimeters. Actually, I'm going to use 60 instead. And also this side is going to be 60. And say trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend, trim and extend. And then I'm going to apply also a chamfer from this point. I'm going to offset it by 500, as you can see by those temporary blue lines. And then diagonally, I'm going to make by 130 degrees, I'm going to create a chamfer of 60 degrees and then take it downwards by 900 and then another 60 degrees. Then press SL on your keyboard for slice, and then you're gonna press your points like this so that you can remove this line and say delete. And now you created a sort of like a chamfer on the back of your parapet. And then you're gonna apply materials to this and say concrete. And then when you scroll down, you're gonna make this precast concrete. So you're gonna load in precast and say apply, okay, and then finish, go to reference level, drag it towards this reference plane, lock it, drag it to this reference plane and then lock it, and then open up the 3D view, and this is how your bridge parapet looks, your span parapet looks. Load it into project and close and say no, I'm not gonna save this. Open up the walkway, so I'm gonna place it like this, and then I'm just gonna randomly place it and say generate a section right there. So on my section, I'm gonna open up my section. And don't worry if this looks much different, guys. Remember, apply this same logic on the one you already have generated. So I'm going to select my parapet, and then I'm going to move it from this insertion point to this. So it's going to be placed like that. Then just drag it towards. Okay, so I'm going to drag it to this point. As you can see, it clashes. So we're going to have to adjust the width of our slab. So we're going to have, so it's 26. So we're gonna have to subtract the 26 from each side. So I'm gonna go to walkway, select my slab and say edit boundary, attach it like this, select it, then I'm gonna move it by 26 this side. Perfect. Say finish edit mode. And now I'm gonna have to attach my parapets. So the length of my parapets is gonna be, I'm gonna make them 333 on each side. So I'm gonna copy another parapet on each and place it like this. But I'm gonna have to offset it by 50 millimeters in order for me to create a space for expansion joint between our parapets. So this is the logic behind that. And so I'm gonna copy it like this and then move it by 50. Then I'm gonna do the same thing and so on. Copy, move 50, enter, 50, and then copy it, then move this 50, and this is what we have. So I'm gonna drag this one to this point, touch it like this. Perfect. And now I'm gonna select all my parapets, and then I'm gonna say mirror pick axis, and then pick this middle reference plane or your grids on your side, and then it's gonna be copied to the other side. So this is actually how it looks right now. Now the last thing you can apply is obviously the railings, and for the railings, the only thing we can actually a major thing we can actually change is applying the downstand beam, which gonna be supporting the railings, your balustrades. So in order for you to do that, let me just show you what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna go to architecture and say railings, and then I'm gonna use the 1000 by 1000 millimeters and say pick lines, and then I'm gonna pick the edge of this approach ramp and say finish edit mode, pick new host, and then pick this ramp. So as you can see, we only have the balustrades and the top railing. So I want the downstand beam at the bottom of this railing supporting these balustrades. So in order for, let me just show you what I'm talking about. If I select this railing and then select the one I've generated, pick new host. Okay, let me set the base offset to 100. I'm actually talking about this, but for ours it's gonna be much different. So I'm gonna remove this and then go to File, New, Family, and then I'm gonna search for metric profile rail and say open. And on our metric profile rail, I'm gonna go with line, and then from this point, I'm gonna take it to the left by 75 millimeters, and then I'm gonna take it upwards by, so I'm just gonna take it upwards by 75, and then this side also it's gonna be 75, and then 75. So I'm gonna go upwards and offset it by 150, and then I'm gonna draw two horizontal lines, each by 30 millimeters from each side. And then I'm gonna take these lines upwards by 100, 120. And then I'm gonna draw diagonal lines joining them like this. So this side, just gonna remove this, select these two lines, and then mirror them towards the side. So here we have our profile for our downstand beam that supports our balustrade. So I'm gonna load it into our project. So load into project, and then I'm gonna save this. So I'm just gonna name this downstand and say okay. So it's loaded into our project, and then I'm gonna open up my 3D view, go to railing, and on my railing I selected 1100 millimeter railing, pick lines, and then I'm gonna pick this lines and say finish edit mode. But we're not gonna stop there. I'm gonna go to edit type, duplicate, and say okay. And then on my balustrades, I'm gonna go to edit and then set my base host, my base offset to 150 for all of them. Base offset to 150, and then I'm gonna say apply, okay, and then I'm gonna go to rail structure, and then I'm gonna say insert. So for the profile, we're gonna load in our profile that we generated, so it's downstand, and then we're gonna apply material to that. So I'm gonna make it precast concrete and say okay. And now I'm gonna say apply and then okay. So this is what we have. So I'm gonna select my railing and say pick new host, and then pick my approach ramp. So this is how it looks. So after generating that railing, please apply the same logic you did for the ramps and all those things. So to make this tutorial short, I'm not gonna apply the railing towards everything. So I'm just gonna use examples for each section. So let's pick this ramp for let's pick this spiral ramp for example. I'm gonna go to railing, pick lines, and then pick the side and say finish edit mode. I'm gonna change the type and say pick new host and then I'm gonna pick this ramp. So it's gonna be applied like this, but it's offset. So remember the total width of this downstand is 150. So I'm gonna set the offset from path to -75, and then it's going to be adjusted like this. Or if it was on the other side, it was going to be 75, and it was going to be properly adjusted like we just did. So this is how it looks. And now also for your landings, you're going to go to railing and say pick lines, and then pick this line and say finish. And then I'm going to change its type and say pick new host, and then pick this railing, select this and set the offset from path to -175, and then it's going to be adjusted like this. Perfect. And now you can apply the same logic this side, go to railing, pick lines, and then pick each side. So it's a long process. Finish edit mode, change the type, pick new host, pick this host, and then it's going to be adjusted like this. So apply the same logic. You're gonna apply the same thing on your abutments, but yeah, obviously you're gonna make way for pedestrians when it comes to your approach ramps and all that. And for this one, obviously you're gonna say railings, and then you're gonna join them like this. And then you're gonna change the type and say finish edit mode, pick new host, and then you're gonna pick your apartment or your landing, and then it's gonna be adjusted like this. So perfect. So guys, thank you for watching. Revit closing down while I was busy threw me off. Everything was kind of a mess on the second round, if I can call it that, of this tutorial. But yeah, I think if you apply the logic I showed you towards what you are currently working on, I think things will be all right on your side. So please hit that like and also subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will catch you guys on the next tutorial. Peace.